Ciao guys, welcome to another episode of the Personal PR Show. And today we're here with Andrew. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, hello.
Oh my God, what time is it for you? For me here, it's 4 p.m. It's tea time.
It is 10 a.m. So I'm just starting my day off a little bit on this side. Yeah.
Wow. And you are in Panama, right? These days.
That is correct. I am Panama City, Panama for the time being. So enjoying some wonderful sunshine and some delicious food and some beach action this weekend.
Oh my God, we all envy you. But spring is coming to Europe as well, even to cold Switzerland. So we won't envy you as much next month. Anyway, but for now, we're still envying you. But Andrew, we're here to talk about today. Let me read the title of our conversation today: how to express humor in your business communication. Why? Because you are a humor engineer. Oh my God, what is a humor engineer? I love the title already, but you have to explain to us, what is it that you do? Amazing.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a completely made up term if you hadn't heard of it before. As far as I know, I'm the world's first humor engineer, according to like Google searches and things like that. But essentially, it comes from the fact my background is in computer science and engineering, and so as a computer science engineer, what I was doing was helping organizations and companies and individuals solve problems using computer science, things like technology and programming, et cetera. And so when I moved into this field of starting to help organizations and individuals solve problems using humor, I figured like, oh, I guess that makes me a humor engineer, right? I'm using humor for things like improving business communication or building better relationships or strengthening leadership or reducing stress, et cetera. So I was like, I think that's a perfect term for what it is that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like a little bit like an oxymoron as well, because when you think of engineering, right, it sounds very serious and very, let's say, rigorous as well. And humor is something that's a little bit lighter and softer, right? So the title is perfect because it's really based on this oxymoron. So it really stands out. Well done. Wow. So let's talk about your story, your history with humor. Have you always had humor in your life, even before you became an engineer?
I mean, I think pretty much like most humans on the planet, humor was always, a part of my life in the sense that I always enjoyed laughing and always enjoyed, when people would read. And growing up, I would read. I love puns and I love like Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon comic strip and The Far Side, et cetera. So it was always a part of my life in terms of taking it in, but it was never much part of my life in terms of expressing it. Like I am not the naturally funny person. I am very much the engineer, right? That is the fit. I'm an introvert. If you know your personality assessments, I'm a type A blue square conscientious INTJ with the sign of Aquarius, which means that I am a stubborn, ambitious introvert who likes long walks on the beach. By myself, right? But I was not the funny person. I was the teacher's pet, not the class clown. I was always very good academically, always really good with computers, not so good with people, and thus the computer science and engineering degree. But I got introduced to humor in a more proactive, intentional way at university. I went to The Ohio State University, got my degree in computer science there. But while there, I also started doing improv and stand-up comedy, and that just kind of opened the doors to me of what was possible with humor.
Yes, I see. Because until the last few seconds of the last few seconds of what you just said, I was like, okay, so how did humor come about in your life, actually? Exactly. And then it's in your life, yes.
Yeah, well, what's interesting to me is that I didn't start doing improv and stand up because I thought, who's funny? Me. You should listen to me, like strangers, all of you. Like, no, I only started doing it because my best friend in university wanted to start an improv group, needed people, and basically forced me to join. And I only learned later that he didn't want me to join because he thought maybe I was secretly funny. He wanted me to join because he knew I was organized, because he knew I was an engineer. And he was like, if we're, we need someone that's actually going to keep us on track as a group. And so that's what I did. I didn't have comedy skill, but I had comedy project management. So, we had meetings every Monday as a business. We practiced 3 times a week. We filmed and would go back and watch shows like it was game tape. I read pretty much every book that I could. Like I got into it as a topic just as I would anything. And that's where I discovered and learned that humor is a skill. And if humor is a skill, then it means that it can be learned. And so that was my introduction. It wasn't like, hey, I think I'm funny. It was just kind of pushing me a little bit more into this area that I then later discovered, like, oh wow, this is helping me with all the other stuff that I need to do.
Yes. Oh my God, this is amazing. Yes. And Andrew, I'm very, very happy to announce that Michael has just joined us as a member of the audience today, because in our live personal PR show, sometimes we have members of the audience as well. Hello, Michael.
Hey, how are you? Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to join. But I saw the Zoom link later.
Yes, we're very happy that you're here. Plus, we have two members of the audience as well on Facebook right now in the Facebook group. So yeah, so Andrew, you have your little audience here as well, as you're used to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Let's tell you. So Michael, I'll bring you back to the spotlight in a few seconds. But Andrew, what you have to know about Michael is that he's a futurist. He's a trend spotter. So in different industries, he spots a lot of trends, and this is what he teaches at university as well in San Francisco, and he's created like multiple startups as well around this topic as well. So very, very soon we'll have Michael back here on stage, on the virtual stage, to ask you a question. But Michael, we'll just finish up something with Andrew. So Andrew, thank you for explaining how you approached and you got acquainted and familiar with improv and then with humor. But my question is now, how did you decide to make humor engineering your profession, your very profession? Because I assume that you quit computer engineering, computer science, and then you made this your main profession, your main career. What happened?
That's correct. Yeah. So I, after I graduated from Ohio State, I started working at Procter & Gamble as an IT project manager. So very much kind of in the computer science space. And I was managing IT projects and working on programming and doing business analytics and all of that. And I started incorporating humor into my own work. One, as a way to make it more exciting. And then two, because it was helping with people. Like I said, I've always been good with computers, but I wasn't so good with people. And when I would add a little bit of levity into a meeting, then people would pay attention. Or if I added a little bit of humor to an email, people would be more likely to respond. And I was like, oh, this humor thing is helping me with the hardest resource there is to manage, which is other humans. And so I started to explore that just for my own benefit of like, how do I get better results? And then I remember being in this meeting at P&G where someone else was presenting, and I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, in terms of, I'm so bored right now. It's interesting information, but I'm so bored with how they're presenting it. And this could be so much better. And I was like, someone needs to teach this person how to make this presentation better. And then I was like, oh, wait, like that someone could be me, I guess. And so I like pulled them aside. I gave them some tips of like, you know, hey, if you add some visuals, or if you're to tell a story or make some associations. And essentially that kind of got me on this role where I was like, if I teach other people at P&G this skill of humor, my own work will be better. I'll be less bored in their meetings. And I found that I actually love that type of training. I love this intersection of humor in the workplace and improv in business. I learned that there's a ton of research behind it. So I proclaimed myself the corporate humorist of P&G. Another made-up job title. I guess I've always been doing that. And I kind of assumed someone eventually would stop me. Like, you know, someone from HR or legal would be like, you can't just create your own job title. But no one ever did. And so I started to blog about it and teach people internally, fell in love with the work, and ultimately decided, you know, like, if this is working within Procter & Gamble, it's probably going to work with other places. There's probably other people that need this same thing. And built it out as a side hustle on the side for a little bit. After a couple of years, it's like, no, this thing has legs. And so I left, and that was 2012 was when I left P&G. So it's been a little over 10 years that I've been teaching organizations on how to use humor.
Wow. Okay, so you teach organizations how to use humor for business communication, and then you said for networking as well, right?
Yeah, there's a tremendous number of applications to using humor, and it applies across what we consider the 5 core skills of work. Like, if you think about work as a whole, there's really 5 core high-level things that it builds up to. Is you have to be able to execute or complete a task. whether that is sending an email or clicking a button or shaving an alpaca, right? If you're an alpaca farmer, I guess, you have to be able to think. That's critical thinking and creative thinking. You have to be able to communicate, to share your ideas in a way that people resonate with. You have to be able to connect at a human level, the emotional intelligence, building rapport, and then ultimately you need to be able to lead, to be able to motivate or influence people. And so we think almost every job has some set of those five, and humor applies across each one. Right? Humor can help you to execute faster, to think smarter, to communicate better, on and on and on. And so for sure, it can help with any of those things. Humor can, be not necessarily replace what you need to do, but can add to it in a way.
Certainly. Oh my God, amazing. Yes. So what do you think, Andrew? Shall we bring Michael back to the spotlight? Yes.
Absolutely.
You're here on the stage with us. So what is your question to Andrew?
Oh, I'm just listening here. I think I find it fascinating. I've always put humor in all of the things I do, because I think that's especially acerbic humor tends to attract a lot of people because, we live in a very ironic world and it's something that we need more of. How do you, well, let me ask you a very simple question. How do you create humor? That's the tough one.
Yeah, it's a common question, right? Because people are often like, why humor? What are the actual benefits? And then once they understand that, they're like, how humor? Like, how do I actually do it? Yeah. And there's a number of different ways to approach it. I think the way that we kind of break it down is that ultimately we consider the skill of humor to be the combination of three things. The first thing is that it is your sense of humor. It is what is it that you yourself uniquely find funny, because what I find funny might be different than what you find funny. And when you can kind of adapt and refine your own sense of humor, you'll start to notice the humor in everyday life. You'll notice that there's a lot of humor in the things that happen to you, right? That's where comedians get their material from, is from the things that happen to them. And so I would imagine, as someone who thinks about the future as a futurist, et cetera, there's a lot of funny things that you can start to think about from the perspective. I know like AI and ChatGPT and things like that are big and top of mind, or where things are going for sustainability might be top. Like all of those are material where it's like, oh, I could probably find some humor in that situation, right? If we think ChatGPT, it's like, okay, what can't AI do yet? Well, one, it can't, it's not so great at humor. It's getting a little bit better. So humor is one of those last bastions of it. And it can't laugh. Like you still need a human audience. So as a stand-up comedian, I still need humans to be able to kind of laugh and enjoy my thing. So you can find the mind the humor essentially in your own life. That's your sense of humor. When you take your sense of humor, the things that you find interesting or funny or that make you laugh, and turn it into a story or a joke or an image, that's getting into your ability to humor. So it's how are you taking that initial idea and putting it in a format for other people to receive? And that's where some of the science of humor comes in, because there's things like a comic triple, which is a very specific structure, a very basic structure, one that some people may know, that helps you to create a setup and punchline. So a comic triple is essentially a list of three things where the third thing is unexpected. So for example, if on your LinkedIn profile, you said something like, I'm a futurist, a professor, and an amateur tango dancer. That third thing is a little bit unexpected. And it's not necessarily laugh out loud funny, but it is something interesting that people are going to lean in a little bit more. And when we're talking about context of humor in the workplace, we do mean humor is more broad than just comedy and trying to make people laugh, but just something a little bit interesting. So that's your ability to humor. And then the last component is your agency with humor. And that is essentially, what do you do with the humor? Are you using it just to make people laugh? Or again, as the engineer, there's so many other applications. You could say, oh, I want to use humor at the beginning of a lecture that I have so that people are more likely to pay attention. Well, that might be a little bit different than you saying, I want to use humor in the middle of a presentation where I'm going to make a kind of, I need to explain a complex topic. So I'm going to use an association to make it a little bit more accessible. And that might be very different than like, oh, I want to help to build relationships with the people in my audience. So I'm going to do a quick interactive exercise. Which would also be a different type of humor. So your agency with humor is in what do you actually do with it. So as you start to think about those three things from a very intentional perspective, you can start to build that skill set. And some people are better than others at certain areas. And so tapping into kind of what is your natural sense or style of humor is where we recommend people start.
Yeah. Wow, what a structured answer and very exhaustive as well. Yes, Michael, what is your follow-up to this?
Well, I found joke writing to be a huge challenge. I take snapshots of the culture by, talking about other humor that comedians, for example, have expressed, and I incorporate that into the script. I also have, of course, come up with some of my own jokes, but, again, I guess it's part and parcel of our culture that we have kind of degraded over the past decade, shall I say, in terms of mannerism. So, and I don't know if you know this, but the internet killed the joke. This is a trend, definitely. So you've got a harder time coming up with insightful humor that expresses a trend. So, for example, in the future, kids will ask their mother, what were words? Because they're all using emojis. It's that kind of contextual joke that makes the audience loves that. But so I even went and found a script writer, because I figure, hey, if it works for Jimmy Fallon, it should work for me too.
Exactly. Right? And those are all fantastic ways to start to think about incorporating humor. Like there's some people, and that's what I mean, like tapping into the natural sense or style of humor, is that some people are naturally, they like writing jokes. It's something that, like, I loved it. To me, comedy is like math with words. So I love that aspect of saying, how do we express this in an interesting idea? How do we turn this into a set of punchline? For some people, it's harder. A great thing that you've done or shared is what we consider being a curator, right? So there's these different personas that you can adapt. And a curator is someone who isn't necessarily the one creating the thing that's funny, but is finding memes or quotes or clips of stand-up comedians or whatever, and they can bring that into their material, and they're curating humor for other people. And they can say, hey, this complex thing that I'm actually talking about is actually a lot like this topic that this comedian talks about. So that's a great way to get started. And then from there, you can also always build that skill, right? There's a great kind of logical extension that you can apply. I learned in improv through a school called UCB based in New York and LA, is if this is true, what else is true? Where you can take an initial premise or idea and extend it a little bit further. It's almost like McLuhan's triad or quadrat or whatever. Is like, if what would this turn into? So even the example that you shared of like, how will kids communicate in the future? It's like, oh, well, right now it's text. Now it's text plus emoji. Eventually it'll just be emojis. And it's like, oh, we've almost gone full circle back to hieroglyphs, right? It's almost like we're now back in ancient Egypt. And so will it continue to evolve? Just a bunch more smiley faces and other things. So there's a great way to kind of say, oh, even with this initial idea, that sense of humor, you can extend that a little bit further. So I think those are all great examples. And the last thing that you shared is you don't have to do this thing alone. As you mentioned, Jimmy Fallon or Saturday Night Live or plenty of other comedians, etc. They workshop material. They work with other people. You can bring someone. This is one of the things that we do, is work with groups to say, okay, how do we punch up your presentation? How do we punch up your script? So if you don't have that skill set, you can find someone that can help you to do it.
Yeah, I found that unfortunately, all of the people I spoke to all wanted to study what I did. In other words, they had to basically bone up on my particular, disciplines. And so I found that ramp up was just too long for me. I said, okay, I'll just go and create it myself. It'll be easier.
Well, and
but this is a great,
what we
this would
believe
be a
in.
great job description for someone, hey, help people who present often come up with insights that might be humorous.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where I do think in the future that we will have an AI will get to that point, because there's certain structures within comedy that anyone can learn, that also machine learning could learn as well. Like I mentioned, a comic triple, that's a beautiful thing. Whenever you have a list, that can be kind of a signal to your brain to be like, could I add something funny or interesting as the very last item? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be a list of 3. It could be a list of 7. And so if you're giving, here are all the benefits to working with our organization, right? Say it's a sales conversation. Do your normal 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, and then add something at the very end where it's, just something a little bit different, where it's like, not only will you increase profits and boost customer satisfaction, but you'll enjoy life a little bit more. or, you know, even something small that, like I said, is just a slight diversion. And so when you have that skill set, even if you don't necessarily know the topic particularly well, you can then help other people punch up their material. But more so than that, what we try to do at least is our goal is to train the individual on the skill of humor, right? Because it's kind of like, you know, changing the old cliche, because it's like if you tell a person a joke, they'll laugh for a moment. But if you teach a person how to joke, they'll laugh for a lifetime. And that's our goal, is to build the skill of humor of other people.
Right, right. Yeah, very good.
Amazing.
Right.
Oh my God. Who would have thought that we would have a conversation today with a humor engineer and with a futurist and transporter?
Yeah.
And then we would end up talking about, you know, trends in humor relating, you know, to AI. Wow. Oh my God. This is so good. That's just serendipity.
Well, you know, for many people, unfortunately, the future looks kind of bleak. So it definitely needs to be diffused as much as possible with humor. Otherwise, you know, I often tell people some not very attractive trends. I try to stay away from them, but, you know, sometimes you have to actually delve into it. For example, Silicon Valley Bank failure. You know, it's a time compression Uber trend. You know, it was called the social media bank run. All of these things are accelerating in time. So if you look at the timeline on the horizon, things are happening so fast, and they're going to continue happening faster and faster and faster. And a lot of people want to harken back to the old days. So I tried to say, hey, you know what? If you were transported back to the 1860s London, you would have absolutely no patience with the idiocy around you, because people were moving far too slow for you. So I tried to, you know, make them visualize that, and, you know, and try to make that somewhat humorous, if possible.
Absolutely. And it's certainly needed. And I think this is one of the things that I very much appreciate about humor, is that you're exactly right. Like, there are some difficulties going on in the world right now, right? There are things that are on the top of mind for anyone listening. It might be specific work-related things like projects and deadlines and changes, or possibly board restructures, or maybe, you know, looming. Maybe it's the fact that you might be like layoffs, etc. There's some macro trends, like you said, of the bank runs, or is there a recession coming, high interest rates? There could be global impact in terms of the climate crisis or social injustice, or what. Like, there's plenty of reason to feel down about things. And I think the problem is that sometimes with some speakers or some experts, et cetera, is that they tend to gloss over that a little bit, and they say things like, you just got to stay positive, or, you know, everything will work out in the end, or everything happens for a reason. And it's like, well, yeah, things happen for a reason, but sometimes the reason is because you made a poor choice, or because, you know, someone's being a jerk face, or it's just bad luck, or whatever. And so what I appreciate about humor is that it's not about pretending like everything is amazing, because that can be toxic positivity. To ignore the reality of everything is toxic positivity, which can be just as bad as constant negativity. And so humor is less about saying everything is amazing, and more about saying, how do I make this one situation just slightly better? How do I change my perspective about it so that it's not going to completely beat me down, but gives me an opportunity to stand up in the face of this adversity? Because humor can give us a little bit of that distance. If we can find the humor in a situation, it means that it's not fully controlling us. It's a lot like, there's a great Kurt Vonnegut quote that says, laughter and tears are both responses to frustration. I myself prefer to laugh because there's less cleaning up to do afterwards. Right. And so it's like, how do we find this humor? It's a form of resilience, I think, in a lot of ways, and is really important for people to recognize, is to not pretend like, to not say, hey, we're saying use humor because everything is great, but almost more so, use humor even if things aren't great, so that you make it a little bit better and give yourself a little bit more of an opportunity to approach it differently.
Yeah. Wow, I love this. I love all of your quotes. Yes. So we are unfortunately approaching the end of our conversation today. But Andrew, I do have one last question, which is a question that I ask all of my guests on the Personal PR Show. Some people find it silly. Some people are like, oh, actually, that is thought-provoking. So the question is, what is the question that we, Michael and I, haven't asked you over the past 30 minutes, but we should have asked you? And what is the answer to that?
Well, I mean, the first thing, I don't know why, but I love asking the question to people of, what is the story of your name? And so just as a fun kind of get to know you, like why are you named, what it is that you're named. And so I'll tell you the story of my name is Andrew Joseph Tarvin. Prior to being born, I was supposed to just be Joseph. That's what my parents picked for me. But then I was born and my parents took a look at 0-minute-old me and decided I didn't look like a Joseph. Which I don't know how you know that with an infant that is still like, just fresh out of the womb, but
you were not an average Joe. See, guess your parents knew that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I was not the average Joe. So they got a baby naming book from the hospital and clearly didn't get very far because I'm Andrew.
Right.
So they got, I guess they skipped Aaron because of the double A's, or maybe they skipped Adam because I have a brother named Adam. So they're like, we already got one of those at home. They got to Andrew and like, boom, Andrew Joseph Tarvin, there it is. So that's one of my favorite questions is what's the story of your name? The other question that you may ask is also, okay, what do I do now? Maybe if I'm listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm interested or curious about this idea of humor, maybe I want to start. Certainly, we've got a bunch of free resources on our website at humorthatworks.com, which you can check out. We have a free humor persona assessment where you can kind of learn what your natural humor persona style is and how you can start to adopt that in the workplace and beyond. And if you're like, I don't want to go to your website, the other thing that we encourage is kind of a mindset shift or almost a habit to create what we call 1 smile per hour, which is essentially what is one thing that you can do each hour of the day that brings a smile to your face or the face of someone else. And as you have that as a goal, you'll start to notice just how easy it is to make very small micro changes or very small levity moments that you can bring to the day, and has a huge impact, not only on your day, but the day for other people. So we'd encourage you to try that out.
Very good.
This is amazing. Let's do that, Michael. Michael, we have to take the quiz, number 1, and then we have to smile at least once per hour.
Once an hour, right.
I will be checking out that resource as well. Does it include the night hours as well, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully if you can lucid dream, I mean, do fun lucid dream things, right? Fly in your dreams, etc. But if you can't, I'll give you a break for the sleeping hours. And during the day, it's, whether it's just smiling or even just finding something to make someone else smile, sharing a meme with someone, or, listening to music that you enjoy, any small thing that can bring a little bit of levity, I think is a good thing to do.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. Oh my God. Yes. Let's do that. Let's go and do that, Michael.
Yes.
Wow, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for bringing joy and laughter and smiles to our day for 33 minutes in a row. This has been a treat.
Yes,
thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Andrew, come back soon to the Personal PR Show, please.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend.
And you. Bye. And bye, guys. Thank you so much for following us on the Personal PR Show. We'll see you next week for the next episode. Bye.
Yes.